Welcome back to the Midtown Madness podcast. This is Zach Miller. This is a very special episode. We're going to call this episode 2.5. This is a crossover Arch Baron Cup edition of the Midtown Madness podcast featuring Talking Out Loud with Sully, Dan Sullivan, and myself and my co-host Peter Hale. This is going to be a little different than our normal episodes. Sully has his own radio show on ESPN affiliate in Dayton, so we let him drive the bus a little bit. So we apologize. You're going to have to hear his voice a little bit more than usual for a guest on the show. But we got some questions back and forth about what we think about our team seasons, about our chances in the upcoming game. But it should be a good one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And I want to thank you guys again just for listening and supporting this new podcast. And I really think we have something here, and I'm excited for the future, guys. So thank you, and enjoy this.
And welcome back to Talking Out Loud, the weekly Dayton basketball podcast. But tonight, special crossover episode. And when I mean crossover, I mean that quite literally. It's a crossover episode. We are simulcasting this. I don't think you can simulcast if it's not live, but we're going to do it anyway. A10 Podcasters Unite, and I brought on the hosts of the Midtown Madness Pod at Midtown Mad Pod on Twitter is where you can find them. Zach and Peter join me tonight, diehard St. Louis fans, to talk about Arch Baron Cup Round 2, because it is Arch Baron Cup week presented by Lee's Chicken. I don't know if you knew that, Zach, but it is Arch Baron Cup week presented by Lee's Chicken over here on Talking Out Loud. And it's great to have you guys on the show, Zach. It's been, a full calendar year since I last talked to you on the podcast, right?
Yeah, my dude. By the way, this is the Midtown Madness podcast featuring Dan Sullivan.
Featuring Talking Out Loud. It goes both ways.
Yes, featuring Talking Out Loud, presented by Lee's Chicken. You can't even get like the good chicken, man. Come on.
You guys have Lee's Chicken in Missouri, so I thought about that this week, and I was like, this sponsorship works. It's a perfect crossover sponsorship. When I'm driving down the Lake of the Ozarks, there's a Lee's Chicken right there in Jefferson City, so I know you guys have them, all right? I've seen them. They're there, all right? Well, we also have Pete joining us, co-host of the Midtown Madness Pod. Pete, first time on the Dayton podcast, so are you a hot take kind of guy, or are you just going to keep it level with us?
I'll probably keep it level my first time, but
first time out. Yeah, man. Well, Zach, we have Zach on the pod. He's good for the hot takes, or
just
what amounts of hot takes in this season. There's not a whole lot of hot takes you can make about the Dayton Flyers, but alas, fellas, we find ourselves wading through the college basketball waters, getting to Friday night 7:00 tip on ESPN2, the A10's featured game of the week. This one looked whole lot better about, 3 or 4 weeks ago? So let's start there, guys. We're doing the crossover episode. There will be questions on both sides of the fence. But where are things right now in St. Louis fandom? Because after the Dayton LaSalle losses, for my Dayton listeners, SLU righted the ship. They got 4 in a row against Bonaventure, Rhode Island. Fordham and LaSalle kind of righting that wrong on their first loss to LaSalle. And you guys are on the right side of the bubble. In most projections I've seen, 11-3. What's the fever pitch right now in Billiken land?
I think there's a lot of positivity floating through Billiken Nation. I think with winning the last 2 games, seeing this team pick it up and play at a level that we hoped they'd be at, even without point guard Yuri Collins in the lineup. I think that combined with people are getting to go to the games. They upped it to 1,000 people in the stands.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah, 1,000 people. So it's there's a lot of things to be excited about. I tend to I'm trying to temper my excitement, not necessarily my expectations, but my excitement, just because we've seen it already once. You get to a game day and boom, the hammer drops and you're not playing. So I think there's an air of positivity around the team. I maybe Peter sees something different.
No, I think it's the same. We had one of the longest COVID shutdowns in the country, 33, 34 days. Came
Let's say if
back.
not the longest, right?
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Came back, played a couple lackluster games. As you know, not a game we wanted to come back to with a rival in Dayton. So that was a tough one, and then couldn't get our footing against LaSalle. But since then, things have looked really good, and I would say really in the last 3 games, we look like that team that started the season on quite a hot streak. So I think people are looking at the team right now, thinking we've regained our form, and we're going to be a contender.
I think the only part left is probably Demarius Jacobs, but I feel like he had some decent games during that tough stretch, and maybe it's now more of getting banged up against Bonaventure. But he's about the only piece of the motor that's kind of been acting up.
Well, that was what I was going to ask next, guys, was that in that first game against Dayton, I didn't feel like it was a conditioning issue. And I said as much on Twitter, and I didn't really feel like the lineup looked rusty against each other. What it looked like to me, and you guys probably know this as well as I do, it's really cold here in Chicago right now. Okay. And I don't get to play basketball much indoors during the wintertime. I usually have to play on outdoor courts here in the city. And where I'm going with this is when I get back on the court in April, it will probably take me about 2 to 3 weeks to get any kind of continuity on a jump shot or just a feel for the hoop. It literally, it'll take like multiple hours of me going out to the court. Now, I know that is a very small and menial sample size, but it really rings true. And that's what I saw out of St. Louis when they played Dayton. It wasn't that they were tired in the last 5 minutes. It's that they just couldn't find the rim. It was like a bunch of guys that had been off for the winter and had not had access to a court, finally gets onto a court, and you're just missing bunnies. You're missing the front end. Is that what you guys saw, or let's go this way? What has been the difference between those first 2 games and the last 4 games?
I think it's energy across the board. I mean, those first 2 games, we saw guys tearing us up from the perimeter, whether it's Crutcher or Watson, Beatty at LaSalle. I mean, we could not close out on those guys. They had nothing but time and space to shoot. It just looked like tired legs on our end. I don't know how much of that is COVID related and how much of that is the fact that they weren't practicing together. They weren't in the gym very often at all during that stretch. So I think your analogy actually is pretty apt from what I saw. I don't know about you, Zach.
It felt like there was not a lot of communication. It felt like maybe the communication broke down over the break, and so when you get back in, you lose that kind of that team together, the togetherness on the court where you've got where you're able to make sure the help defense is in the right place, but not over help so that you leave a guy open for 3 and you can't close out. It was a lot of communication, I thought, on the defensive end specifically. I thought our defense was just absolutely non-existent.
Yeah. So then here's the next question: as if we're gonna put the past behind us here, and again, I'll elaborate a little bit for Dayton listeners. St. Louis's resume right now is pretty good. It's not great. It's not bad for an NCAA tournament team. It's pretty good. They have a good win against LSU. They let the wheels fall off a little bit against Minnesota. I watched that game, and it didn't look like that was going to be a game that was worth noting. But now, Minnesota's top 40. They're a pretty decent team to lose to. I think SLU's a little bit better than giving up 90 points to them. But you guys went into the break at 7-1. You sit here at 11-3. In your mind, you have Dayton, VCU, Richmond, George Mason down the lineup here. 3-1, I feel like gets it done. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like 3-1. My buddy actually just texted me before I got on here and said, they need to win out. I said, I could see maybe a VCU loss being okay, given that it's at VCU. But I think
that won't hurt them.
The rest of the way, you have to go out and take care of business. And luckily, we've got a bunch of guys who are seniors. They're businessmen when it comes to the game of basketball, and I think they have a very good shot of winning out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think 3-1 should be enough, especially if that one is VCU. I would even at 3-1 though, I'm kind of sweating what we do in the conference tournament. So
it'll still matter no matter what.
I would rather not be in that position. I'd rather you go 4-0, and I think whatever happens in the conference tournament is fine. It's just seeding at that point.
That's the thing that I was going to say is that if St. Louis goes 4-0 down the stretch with these games, I don't think that it'll matter as much. I think that they could probably take a first-round exit and still squeak in at like an 11. You don't want to put yourself in that position. But the other thing that I just keep going back to is that last week or like last 10 days, the A10 is left open. So you very much could see a couple of games slide in there. I kind of hope for St. Louis's sake and for your guys' sake they don't do that, because St. Louis does have enough meat on their bone that they kind of have enough here on the resume where they can point back and say, hey, we've won some good games. We've kind of avoided the landmines. Whereas a team like Richmond right now, Richmond has 5 games left after tonight, and the only good ones are St. Louis and VCU. So it's kind of like the onus is going to be put on the A10 to maybe get an extra game in there for Richmond, where St. Louis, it'll be like, let's do nothing, because nothing will probably be better than something, right? Do you guys feel that way, or do you want to kind of get maybe another test to pad the resume?
The only other one that we were supposed to play Bonaventure twice this year, so we might have a Bonaventure. That would be the one I would expect them to try and squeeze in if they do that.
Should.
But yeah. I think I'm kind of looking at that week more as they're probably giving them the A10 is probably giving themselves that week just in case anything happens. Like, should VCU or Richmond or anybody have to shut it down, they probably want that wiggle room in case we've got some more cancellations coming up.
Sure.
I definitely agree with that. I think it'll be Bonaventure, and that's really the only one I really want, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the A10 should do. They should put you up against Bonaventure, and it'll turn into like a de facto play-in game for an at-large seed, which is precisely what the A10 wants, because let's think about this from off-the-court standpoint. Not only does the A10 want to have one more game to see, like, hey, who's going to go to the tournament, but if you say, hey, this is our de facto play-in game for an at-large, boom, that's on national television. And that's the big time. That's what A10 wants.
Exactly.
Well, I want to turn this around on you in the spirit of being the most ambitious A10 crossover podcast of all time.
That's what we do.
I want to go back to that game. Unfortunately, I watched it, and it was depressing. I want to know where your head was at during that game, because I know leading up to that game, we had shared some text messages where you were very down on Dayton and telling me not to worry, and I'm worrying. So tell me what you saw in that game from the Dayton Flyers that allowed them to come away with the win.
Oh my gosh. So I can't remember the last time I was so disgusted after a Dayton win. Like a win. I don't think I've ever been so disgusted with a Dayton win in my life. And I truly mean that. I had the podcast that I did, the Rapid Reaction podcast that I do on Talking Out Loud. It was the number one listened to episode all season, because I went on the microphone and I was as hot as I've ever been on a microphone. And I try to temper it back to like make sure all of my arguments are going to come through in like a congruent manner, and I'm going to talk and say things that are going to make sense, right? And that night I was just embroiled. Like I was absolutely embroiled. And I was sitting there in my group chat, and all my buddies were like, yeah, we're beating SLU, whoop-de-doo. And I was literally like, this game doesn't effing matter. Like, our season is already pissed away, and now Dayton's going to beat St. Louis? Like, I was livid, absolutely livid. Like, you guys are going to come out and lose to LaSalle and fucking Fordham, and then you're going to lose a stinker, like, get absolutely blown out by VCU, and then they had the unmitigated gall to beat St. Louis on their own home floor. I was disgusted, because I was like, for fans that are like, well, why are you so mad about a Dayton win? Okay, the Dayton team doing well affects my bottom line. Let me lay it out there for all the listeners, okay? When the team's doing well, my show is doing better. So I have a monetary interest in the team winning. It's just the way it is for me. And that night I was sitting there like, how dare this team take so long to put it together and beat St. Louis when I know the season is dead and over and buried. Like, it was like they wanted to give me this moment to be so happy. And I was like, how dare you? Oh, I was just disgusted. I really was. Because in the last like 5 minutes, I'm sitting there on my couch, and it was kind of the same way when you guys play like a cupcake, like when you're playing like a LaSalle or whatever. I mean, I guess you guys lost to LaSalle, but you're sitting there on your couch and you're like, we're not going to lose this game. We're not going to lose this game. I was the opposite. I was like, no, there's no way Dayton's going to win this game. No way. No way. They're not going to win this game. And the clock hit 0. It was kind of like the Fordham game where I'm like, we're not going to lose to Fordham. We're not going to lose to Fordham. And then it happens and you're like, God damn it. Like, we just lost to Fordham. I was like, we just beat St. Louis. I couldn't believe it. And, you know, for the rivalry's sake, it didn't even matter. Like, that's the worst part. It's like, I can't even sit here and talk crap to you guys because the game did not matter for us one lick.
Well, that's the spin zone, isn't it? I think it's a great thing that you're like friends are hitting you up, being like, we're beating SLU. Like, the excitement is still there, even in a bad, year for you guys. I think it's worth noting.
They were chirping my ear all afternoon because our odds were so good on the book. So my friends, like, anytime they see like a heavy underdog line, they'll be like, all right, we're slamming Flyers tonight. It's going to be a Flyers night. And I was like, you guys are out of your goddamn mind. Like, Dayton's going to get blown out tonight. You know it. And then, of course, you know how that goes in the friend groups. Like, I get it shoved in my face at about 8:30 that night, how wrong I was to not support the boys. But I said it, and I said as much, and I'll leave you guys with this, is that even on the month-long pause that St. Louis had, there was nothing to indicate that they were going to win that game. Nothing. I mean, even to this day, there's nothing to indicate to me that Dayton's going to win this weekend.
Was it the VCU loss, the nature of that loss immediately before it? Was it the Fordham loss? I mean, when I look at your whole schedule, I don't necessarily think like, oh, the season's over, it's out of hand, they have no chance.
After the Fordham game, it was because you're 5-3, you're 1-2 in the conference, and you've lost to analytically two of the worst teams in the conference, right? Fordham far and away the worst team in the conference. So at that point, for Dayton, it was out of reach, considerably out of reach, because they didn't have enough on the non-con slate. I mean, you guys know how it is. Usually you go into conference slate, you have, 8 or 9 wins. You maybe have 1 or 2 losses that are meh, maybe one that's good, you don't have to worry about. But this year, we didn't really have those opportunities. So Dayton went in 4-1 to conference play, and their only wins were against Mississippi State and Ole Miss, neither of whom are very good in the SEC, and we kind of knew that. So the ice was already thin going into conference play, but just X's and O's. I mean, you watch this team, and we lost to LaSalle by 2, and that took a 22-point effort from a freshman that had been with the team for like a week. You just started to see things where you're thinking to yourself, this team just isn't good enough. And they're not. It's, now that we're in mid-February, I can say that confidently, like, we were right. They weren't good enough because good teams don't lose to Fordham. It's just that simple, right?
So, going forward after you beat the Billikens, you guys go 2-3, wins versus Rhode Island and versus George Mason, and then 2 losses at Duquesne and Rhode Island, respectively, and then Virginia Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So, what are you seeing from this team? Is there any positives you're taking from Dayton going 2-3 in the last 5?
I mean, not really. Like, I said it last night that they lost a stinker, and we're recording on Wednesday evening for listeners. We're releasing, for Thursday morning. So I say last night, Tuesday evening, Dayton lost to Rhode Island in double overtime. And I said they blew an 18-point lead with about 8 minutes left to lose to Rhode Island. And Rhode Island's not a good team. And I said on Twitter right after the loss that, it's a game that Dayton deserves to lose. Like, when you go to overtime, when you're up 18, you deserve to lose. And the second thing I said was that in mid-February, there's just nothing to be learned by that. You learn lessons in November at Thanksgiving tournaments. You learn lessons in December in the non-con. Hell, you learn lessons losing to LaSalle and Fordham in January. You're done learning lessons by February. There's no more excuses. There's no more, this team missed a couple games here. You missed a couple games there. I mean, you guys know how it is with St. Louis. Yeah, they missed a month, but that no longer matters. St. Louis needs to win games now, and they can't fall back on that excuse. And it's kind of the same thing with Dayton. It's like there's no lesson to be learned when now you're 7-6 in conference, you're 11-7 overall, and your season's going nowhere. We all are on the same page. You have to win in the A10 tournament to get it done. But, the positives from the X's and O's standpoint, Jalen Crutcher is going to be the best player on the floor every single night. He just is. Is he going to win the A10 player of the year? Probably not, because Dayton's not good enough. But I mean, that's the positive, is that we get to watch him, score 20 points a night. I kind of feel bad that he has to go out like this, but that's one positive. I mean, the future, and I don't want this to be like doom and gloom. Like, the future in Dayton looks fine, but as far as positives from this team, it's hard to find. They're a tough team to watch.
Well, speaking of Crutcher going out like this, is he going out? I mean, St. Louis fans actually need to know that he's not coming back for another year.
Don't worry, St. Louis fans.
Let him be a lottery pick. Sweet Jesus, let somebody take him in the lottery.
So here's my thing with Crutcher, and I'll lay this out. I don't have any problem saying this on my own podcast too. He's the type of guy that'll send his stats out to social media after a loss. And what I mean to say by that, if he wants to do that, he's a 21-year-old kid. I probably would have done the same thing as a crappy 21-year-old kid, whatever. But guys like that don't come back for the better of the team or the better of the school. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm just kind of like illustrating his personality. He's not the type of guy that would come back for one more run. He's going to go and see what kind of money he can make. And rightfully so, that's what he should do. Because if we're looking at Dayton next year and beyond, Crutcher does this program and Anthony Grant and the team no favors by coming back for another year. So rest assured, St. Louis fans, this will be the last time you see Jalen Crutcher unless we meet you in Richmond. I promise you. I promise.
That's all we needed. That's all we needed.
He's not coming back.
But before we get into the upcoming matchup, I have one question, and I think I speak for a lot of Billiken fans by saying that game last night between Dayton and Rhode Island ruined the night up until the game switched over on CBS Sports.
Oh, I felt so bad for you. I did.
But there were quite a bit of people in the arena last night that may not have watched that game, and there was a big stat from that game. A guy who actually played really well in the first meeting between the two teams, Zimmy. Just tell me his last name. He had 30 points. Yes, he had 30 points last night. Tell us about that.
Yeah, what's so funny is that because Dayton lost last night in like horrible fashion, you didn't hear a goddamn peep on Twitter today about Zimmy scoring 30 points, which was the weirdest thing ever. Because like you guys know this, a freshman scoring 30 points in conference play is like unheard of. I can't even think of the last time that happened in the A10. Maybe Trey Mitchell last year, I guess. And he's kind of even broken the mold as far as freshmen. But it's so funny, like Zimmy put together such a great game last night, and now it's just completely overshadowed by the fact that Dayton just, pulled a whole full diaper last night and pissed it away. So it's weird. I mean, he had such a coming out game, and that would have been like the Zimmy game had Dayton pulled it out. But instead, we're talking about Jalen Crutcher missing a free throw down the stretch and Dayton losing a stinker. So is it a sign of things to come? Boy, I hope so, because Zimmy gave Jalen Crutcher like an option off the ball. And, if St. Louis fans haven't watched Dayton much, Crutcher has come around a high ball screen at the top of the key like a million times and then driven down the middle of the lane. And he's looked for an alley-oop that's simply not there because Obi Toppin is not in school any longer. Like, that scenario has played out so many times. And so last night, they kind of got back to the little high two-man game that translates into easy buckets down low. And, it was encouraging. Like I said, it's not like all doom and gloom in Flyer land. It's just that we kind of had to pass the buck on this season because it's not going anywhere.
What do you I mean, NIT maybe. Do you NIT's still on as far as we know, right?
As far as we know, yeah, I think Dayton's is definitely headed there as of right now. I guess that might even be a little bit of a stretch. But, I mean, the thing that's funny, like going into this game for Dayton fans, is that while the season's completely over, I think most Dayton fans are rather excited about tomorrow night because we really have a chance of like ending your season. Like, I feel like if Dayton wins tomorrow night, I'm going to get your guys' opinion on this. Zach, like, do you feel like St. Louis can come back from that loss? Like, what would they have to do if they lost tomorrow night to Dayton?
I prefer not to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's funny is that I'm kind of looking forward to it because I'm a little bit of a conference homer in that with the A10 I want us to get bids and I know it's so out of sight out of mind for Dayton, so I'm kind of like I would love if we had a 3 bid Bonaventure, St. Louis, VCU, or Richmond or whatever. I would like that to happen. But man, Pete, it sure does feel like Dayton can kind of throw a whole wrench in that plan, and we still have to play Bonaventure. So, where does it leave you tomorrow night if Dayton wins?
Yeah, we just talked about how we probably have to go 3-1 at least in these next 4 games. I mean, we definitely have to go at least 3-1, if not 4-0. And I really don't want the 1 to be against Dayton because I think that's one of those things you look at, or the committee will look at, you losing to kind of a middle of the conference right now team twice. It's not a great look. If you lose to Dayton once and you lose to VCU once, that's different than losing to the same team twice, I think. So you lose to Dayton. If we lose to Dayton tomorrow, we might just have to win the conference tournament at that point. At least win out and then get to the final.
It's interesting that you mentioned the conference tournament because I got a message during the game, Tuesday night now, that said the announcers suggested that if 2 teams, SLU was one of them, and then I guess VCU, if those 2 teams win out, I guess that's not possible, but pretend it is, that we should skip the conference tournament. And that didn't even that had never even crossed my mind. What do you guys think?
Have they kind of finalized what's going to happen with that though? Because I think the fear right now is a lot of, especially power conference teams who are going to be like, I don't know, 10-8 in conference or something, but not that great overall, trying to sit out the conference tournament and pick up a 9 or a 10 seed or something. Yeah. Has the NCAA said for sure what it's going to do? I mean, aren't they giving conferences the option to pick their auto bid?
Yeah, so as of right now, the NCAA has said that conferences can operate autonomously to do whatever they want to do, rule-wise, And so the first domino to drop, and there will be dominoes, someone's going to do it, and there will be a trickle-down on this, is that Gonzaga and BYU are thinking about sitting out the West Coast Conference Tournament, and frankly, they should. In the A10, it's going to get dicey. And I don't really think it's worth discussing just yet. And I think that the reason the A10 is not going to go down this road is because of that final week that they built in. Because the A10 built in that week, they can still put teams to win some games right there at the end. And so the immediacy of a team canceling in that final week, I just don't think is going to be plausible. Like, you're going to be talking about a tournament where teams are going to be pulling out 2 to 3 days beforehand. I just don't see how that's going to fly with the conference office. So I think it's in a situation where if you can opt out in the next 2 weeks, you go ahead and do it. Like Gonzaga, BYU, they're going to get in regardless. But St. Louis, Bonaventure, even VCU was still work to do. That is a really dicey proposition. And in our conference, the one thing that I've kept telling people is that I don't have to worry about our conference having a tournament or not having a tournament. The A10 needs the television revenue. They need to get a bid in one way or another. they're going to have the tournament. Money always talks in these scenarios. We've seen that time and time again in 2020. So I'm not concerned about the A-10 having a tournament or not, to be frank.
I think I think you're right. We still have a few teams who need to build their resume and nobody who can just kind of rest on theirs. If we had a situation like last season where Dayton's, run away with the conference and it is
Dayton
a clear,
can sit, everybody else can play.
Exactly. We have a clear 1 or 2 seed in the tournament already. That's a totally different ball game. But yeah, now we've got 3 teams who are kind of sweating it out right now and really need some quality wins down the stretch. So I don't see that happening, at least at this point.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Boys, this is perfect time. We're about a half hour in. So Zach knows it. On my program, there's always trivia, and tonight is no different. Crossover episode or not, I have trivia for my listeners. You guys might not have trivia music, but I have trivia music. So in my podcast, the music will be playing right now. Okay, for trivia. Here we go. All right, tonight's trivia has to do with the series between UD and SLU. Most educated fans of the Arch Baron Cup know that the series dates back to 1952 when the teams met for the first time in the NIT tournament. At that time, young listeners, it was a better tournament than the NCAA tournament. Keep that in mind. Okay, boys. Tomorrow night is the 66th matchup between Dayton and St. Louis playing basketball. And my question to you, you probably already know what the series sits at roughly. I'll give my listeners 65 games. UD's still up 37-28. In those 65 games, how many matchups saw one or the other team ranked? So in 65 matchups, how many games saw Dayton or St. Louis ranked? So Zach, I'll let you answer first.
Well, so I'm trying to think this one out. The Billikens were probably not ranked we're not usually the ranked squad. Let's see, 12, 13, 14. That's 3 seasons ranked. That's 6 games. 7, including this year. And then let's say Dayton doubled that at 13. We'll say 21.
Pete, do you have an answer?
I think I'm going to go less than that, actually. Out of 66, 65. I think I'm going to go with 15.
So Pete is closer. The answer is 11 games. There is 11 ranked matchups out of 65 for the 2 teams. And I'll do you one better. There has only been 2 games where both teams were ranked. Now, Zach, you like what you did here was pretty good, all right, because you broke it down and you're trying to think like, all right, how many matchups? Here's what you missed. The series started in 1952 in the NIT. Both teams were ranked. Then they played again in the NIT in 1955. Both teams were ranked. And then, I'll do you one even better. The 1 year that they were in, I think there was 2 years, 2 years, they were in the Great Midwest Conference together. 1994, they played 3 times, and St. Louis was ranked through the entirety of the back half of the 95 season. So that accounted for 3 games right there. So you were pretty close getting 7, and then all you had to do was just add a couple more here and there. So there you go. There's your trivia for the night. Dayton St. Louis rivalry.
So none of them were in the 12, 13, 14?
So, no, they were. I'm saying, like, you had it. Like, you were getting there with the 12, 13, 14. The problem was that 94 season was a bit of an outlier in St. Louis history, and they were ranked that whole season.
That's the highest attended team of that year. One of the top. What is it, Pete? We were like
during the mid-90s, they were one of the top national in attendance, in average attendance, because they were playing in the hockey arena in St. Louis at the time, and they were drawing between 15 and 20,000 fans a game.
Is that right? For St. Louis basketball? What?
Yeah, we were in the top 10 in attendance for, I think, at least 3 or 4 seasons in a row.
Wow. Well, the way I'll bookend the trivia is that the last time that Dayton and St. Louis met and both teams were ranked was the 1955 NIT tournament, March 15th, 1955 to be exact. So I always come hot with the trivia, boys. That's my thing. You know, I love going down memory lane. I love doing that kind of stuff. All right, let's shift this focus a little bit to Friday night's game. We got the marquee game again. We're wrapping up the crossover episode with the Midtown Madness Pod boys over at St. Louis, and your boy Sully does Talking Out Loud podcast over for our Dayton fans. 7:00 tip, ESPN2. I always love when the Flyers get that prime time spot on Friday night. First question I'll have for you guys before we get to the actual basketball playing. What is your ideal schedule for the basketball games in conference? And I'll tell you first and foremost, I'm a Tuesday, Friday guy. I have grown very impartial to Tuesday, Friday because I love ending my week with a little mid-major hoops. Some people like the traditional Wednesday, Saturday. What say you? Zach, you can go first on this one.
Well, first of all, I want to remind everybody that it's a 6 p.m. start Central Time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. See, I always have to adjust, and now I get to talk to Central Time people. I live in Chicago for St. Louis listeners, so my whole life is about like transitioning to Eastern Time. I apologize.
But I love Saturday 10. I love 11, 1:30, 3:30, 5:30. I love it. I cannot get enough of
sports lineup.
Yes, and I love NBC Sports presentation. I just think their picture's clear. I think their graphics packages are superb. I love that Saturday. So, yeah, I'm a big Wednesday, Saturday guy. Pete?
Yeah, I got used to Wednesday, Saturday when I was at SLU. I was a manager actually at SLU in the early 2000s, and we were still sharing an arena with the Blues. And typically we would play a noon Saturday game, and they'd get us out of there as quick as possible and convert the floor over to the ice for a 7:00 hockey game. So I actually, even though I resented being the second-class tenant in an arena, I really did start to get used to the Wednesday night and then Saturday noon game. I kind of like that. But now I'm at the point where the only thing that matters to me is that tip-off is a little later in the evening, so I can get my kids to bed and start a game. So we've had a couple of 9:00 tips Eastern time recently, and I love that.
Yeah,
that's prime time, Dad.
There's nothing like a Saturday noon game and then getting yelled at by an usher on the way out. It's an experience that you just have to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always said to people that you used to be able to set your watch by Wednesday, Saturday. You know, it was always Wednesday, Saturday in the A10. That's when everybody played the whole conference. And now with the TV deal, it's kind of all over the place. But I don't know. Something about Tuesday, Friday. I just really like Tuesday when you're just coming off the weekend. The week's still fresh, you know, and then you're ending your work week and you got hoops. So that's where I'm at. But
are you a CBS Sports or an NBC Sports? Which broadcast do you like better?
CBS Sports has really been letting me down on the announcers so far this year. And last night was no different, man. I mean, they said the conference was going to get 6 bids potentially. Like, the lack of research that goes into that statement is profound. It's truly profound.
Is it a lack of research, or is it almost that, like, I've come to the idea that they're just marketers with a microphone. Like, they send them out there and just make, like, that's just, I think some of it is also they're trying to pump up the matchup.
Yeah, well, that's the fine line that I was going to say. So the story that I told going into what the hell game was it for Dayton? This was last week. I guess it was on Tuesday. Last Tuesday against VCU. We played on CBS Sports Network, and I happen to know Dan Dickow from like our podcast network. And so he hit me up and he was like, hey, can you give me some of the talking points between Dayton and VCU? He goes, I know you watch the team. And for listeners, St. Louis, Dayton don't know, Dan Dickow used to play at Gonzaga, and now he's a commentator at CBS Sports. So I was like, great. I get to inform Dan Dickau, like the things that he needs to talk about, the things to stay away from. It was great. I was like, this could not have worked out better because all we ever do is bitch about like our broadcast crews. And then sure enough, I gave him the talking points, whatever, in the morning. And then he gets on the broadcast and he's like, oh, 2 teams that are still jockeying for an at-large. And our fan base had a shit fit. They're like, how dare you say that? We're not going to be an at-large. And I'm like, okay, Dan Dickau is an employee of CBS. How prudent would it be of him to get on the broadcast and say, well, VCU's a pretty good team, but Dayton kind of sucks. They're going through the motions this year. It's like, just like you said, there is speaking in realistic tones. There's pumping up the matchup, and then there's kind of toeing that line, right? And to Dan's credit, he did toe the line a little bit.
6 bids is jumping over that line.
Yeah, and again,
head first dive.
That was what I was talking about against Rhode Island the following Tuesday. This would have been last night. One of the guys that was on the broadcast, some know-nothing, he was like, well, the A-10 could get 6 bids this year. Just like, that is just so stupid. And again, as a professional, like in whether you're doing radio, whether you're doing whatever the hell it is you listener do in your job, to lack that much professionalism, to lack that amount of preparation is like woefully negligent in my opinion. Like, it's your career. Why don't you care what comes out of your mouth? Like, that's what bugs me the most.
I don't mind the cheerleading at all as long as they have their facts right. They lose
exactly.
They lose all their credibility when they're not pronouncing names right. Or like in our game the other day, the Fordham game, they kept going to Yuri Collins on the bench and they were showing Francis Okoro, who is almost a foot taller than Yuri Collins. They look nothing alike. They showed one of our assistants and said,
Ray Giacoletti.
Yeah, they showed Giacoletti and they're talking about Travis Ford. So, like, if they get those things right, if they're not making just basic mistakes, and then they want to kind of hype us up a little too much, then you go, okay, yeah, maybe if things break right, we could get a couple more teams. But when they're getting everything wrong and then they make a statement like that, then you just get mad at them.
And then last night they said Markai Strickland was they got him confused with Josh Hightower, which the only thing they have in common is tall hair.
It's the worst.
So
I can't stand it. I really do. I can't stand it. It's just what we have to do in A10 land. We have to bear through this stuff. It's terrible.
I gotta tell you, this game leading up to it, the Zimmy came in against us last time around, and he had 9 points, and now he's got 29 points the game before. It's scaring me. Damn it! I don't like it.
I get it.
Talk to me.
No, I mean, okay, so this is where we get to like the actual X's and O's. How do you beat Dayton? What kind of team are we, right? And it's pretty simple, really. Like, people keep saying, oh, you never know what you're going to get with Dayton. Like, that could not be further from the truth. Dayton's the same damn team every night. It's just whether they're doing the 2 or 3 things correctly that they need to do to win. So for the St. Louis listeners, it's real simple with Dayton. If you win the turnover battle, St. Louis is going to out-rebound UD. And they didn't in the first matchup, which was like something that just blew my mind. Like, the fact that St. Louis lost the rebounding battle the first time around was absolutely incredible to me. But Dayton is going to turn the ball over a lot. They're going to live and die by the 3. They can't hold leads, and they're going to have scoring droughts of varying amounts of time, right? So the way that you beat Dayton is you limit E.B. Watson and you limit Jalen Crutcher. And that's the thing that St. Louis has not been able to do. And I'll tell you right now, every single game that we lost, Crutcher and Watson have combined for less than 35 points. And I think in most of the losses, they've combined for less than 25 shots. That's the formula for beating Dayton. Turn them over, limit their 2 best scorers, and make someone else beat you, because you just saw it against Rhode Island. Even with a freshman, Zimi Nokeji, scoring 29 points, that still wasn't enough to beat Rhode Island, who's mediocre, because Dayton just doesn't have enough buckets in the lineup. Like guys that manufacture buckets just aren't there.
I think it's interesting that you say limit EB and Crutcher, because I wonder, Travis Ford going into this game, having seen his team play without Yuri Collins for 2 games. Whether he debates giving Goodwin and Fred Thatch the lion's share of the minutes at the 1 and 2 or 3, whatever you want to call it.
2 and 3, yeah, 2 and 3.
Yeah, Goodwin letting Goodwin play the point and still
Crutcher hasn't been playing
Yuri
the point.
Collins.
That's what I'm saying.
Interesting.
Crutcher hasn't been playing the point. He's been playing off the ball for Elijah Weaver. So that's what you'll see tomorrow night. Starting lineup will be Friday night. Sorry, starting lineup will be Elijah Weaver, Jalen Crutcher at the 2, Watson at the 3. You'll get Amzil at the 4. You'll get Big Jordy at the 5. That's what we're gonna roll out. And our bench is short. It's not like you guys where you guys are deep. Like Dayton's not deep. They play like 6 or 7 guys, and that's it.
These are all the things I heard leading up to that last game.
I know. I didn't know you guys were going to be so bad. What the hell? I mean, okay, from your end of it, like both of you guys need to tell my Dayton fans, like, what was going through your head? Was it just kind of like, oh, of course we look this bad? Because for me, I was like, how the hell is St. Louis letting us do this to them?
For me, it was, of course we look bad. I mean, we were off for almost 5 weeks, like I knew whatever team that came out was not going to look like the team in late December that all of a sudden had a flurry of positive tests. So in hindsight, it seems like so obvious that we looked the way we did, but everything was a step slow. We were losing 50-50 balls, not closing out. It just, in hindsight, I mean, at the time I thought I'm not entirely surprised this is happening, as disappointing as it was, but in hindsight, it seems pretty obvious why it was happening that way. I'm still scared of some of the things that Dayton does well heading into tomorrow, but the way we've played defense, especially how we've shored up our perimeter defense in the last few games, I do feel a lot better where we're at.
I agree. I think a lot of it was, of course, Dayton's making all these shots. Like, from the limited time I've seen Dayton, it's kind of like the limited time I've seen like Mizzou. They don't really make shots. Like they don't shoot well from outside. And then I was just like, okay, now Crutcher's double clutching, and what he threw up a one-handed 3 or something. I don't even remember what he did.
He made some circus shots, and that's kind of what the other thing that he does and Watson kind of does is they're not afraid to shoot from really deep. Like they have
really deep, serious
range, and that's I think sometimes if those guys are feeling it, that's where we can get into trouble. If I only felt like there were 2 threats, I'd feel a little better because I love the way Goodwin and Thatch have kind of shut down the 3-point line for teams the last few games. I do get a little nervous, because who's the third assignment? Is it Collins on bad ankles? Is it Gibberson who's going to have to guard Crutcher?
Who's actually stepped up?
Right, he has stepped up, but he's not Thatch or Goodwin.
Sure.
So the fact that there's kind of that third spot is the one that kind of gives me pause. Like we don't necessarily have an answer for all 3 of them at the same time. So if more than one of them is hot, like they were the first time they played, is when both Watson and Crutcher were hitting. That's where I get the most nervous about this matchup, I think.
Yeah, I think you're going to see something different this game from the Billikens. I think the last game they were really trying to push the ball and really trying to get moving and score. They obviously weren't comfortable setting up an offense, but they were kind of just trying to outscore Dayton. And I think they've really gotten back to their bread and butter and are playing a lot more defensive first basketball and letting that kind of be the catalyst for offensive production.
So I'm glad that you guys wanted to hammer home the point, because it gave me all the time in the world to come up with the stat that I wanted to, because I needed to hammer home the point of just how important Ibi Watson and Jalen Crutcher shooting is. And you guys brought it up yourselves. It was like, oh, against us the first time, they were just hitting shots. And you're right. I mean, I said this before. I said this about 2 months ago on my radio show, and I hinted it to you guys just a couple of minutes ago. The formula for Dayton, first and foremost, is that Crutcher and Watson have to score 35 points, and they have to get at least 25 shots. That's it. Like, that is the formula for Dayton, right? So you guys said it. Against St. Louis, they were 9 for 15 from 3, okay, which is bonkers. They had 27 points off 3-pointers. The next night, they went 5 for 14 against URI, which is an okay night. We won that game. Against Duquesne, loss. Crutcher and Watson combined to go 3 for 21 from beyond the arc. The next game, they came back. We won against Mason, 7 for 15 from 3, right around 50%. Against VCU, they were 3 for 8. We lost that game. Against URI, they were 3 for 11. We also lost that game. I mean, you see it right there. Like, it's clear as day. They have to hit 3-pointers for this team because, and it's not like I'm saying structurally this is what Anthony Grant needs to do. It's for the simple necessity of there's just no one else to score the ball for Dayton. They don't have guys that can create their own shot. They don't have an offense that like is glued together. And this is just what we have. It's like I said, in December you go, okay, well if we do this, and this, things can change. It's like it's fucking mid-February, man. Like nothing's gonna change. Like this is who Dayton is, and you guys at least have the luxury of kind of saying, all right, St. Louis can be this or St. Louis can be that. And it brings me to like the last question I wanted to ask you guys tonight, getting near the hour, is that now that the pause is done, and like we said a couple minutes ago, you can't make excuses for the pause anymore. What you have in front of you is what you have in front of you. And the resume speaks for itself. It's 11-3. It's good enough. So we don't have to lean on the pause anymore, even despite the Dayton LaSalle losses. What's the ceiling and what's the floor for St. Louis moving forward?
Pete, take this one.
Let Zach think about it.
Ceiling in terms of the regular season, or how far you think?
I guess like this season, and I guess the floor isn't really a relevant question because the floor for St. Louis is missing the tournament. I think missing the tournament is a colossal failure, and the floor doesn't really matter after that. So let's go after this. Like, what is the expectation for you, and then maybe what is the ceiling of what you think this team can do moving forward?
The expectation is making the tournament. The ceiling, coming into the season, a lot of the John Rothsteins and people like that were giving us kind of the little preseason hype as the non-power conference team to that could make a Final Four run. I don't know.
I thought SLU would be ranked all year for the record.
Yeah. And obviously this season has been full of starts and fits for everybody, or fits and starts for every team. So. There's no way to have predicted some of the things that have happened this season. But to me, this is a program that has never made a Sweet 16 in the, since the tournament expanded to 64. So that's my goal for the season, is to get to that second weekend, take care of business down the stretch in the regular season. Obviously we talked about it before, but I would really like to go 4-0 and then at least make a statement in the A10 tournament, if not winning the thing. And then I think we're set up for a good seed. And if we can get a favorable draw in the tournament, I think this is a team that can make that second weekend and finally get over that hump for us.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I think my expectation is obviously the NCAA tournament. I'd like to say my expectation is second week, but I think my expectation is to get out of the first round.
Yeah.
You got to get over that. And I think Travis Ford wants to get over it. I don't think he's been ever.
I mean, guys, let me reinforce. Dayton hasn't won a tournament game since 2015. Okay, like it's been a while for us too. You've won a tournament game more recently than Dayton has.
Yeah, we've. What was the last one we won? Because we had the loss against Virginia Tech in our last appearance.
I thought you guys won one in that one. Never mind, because it would have been. Okay,
New Mexico State?
2014, I think, would have been it. Yeah.
It was down in Orlando. It would have been NC State.
NC State. It was the NC State game.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought you won the last time you guys got there when you won the A10 tournament. But I was
we were blown out by Virginia Tech. I mean, it was about as bad a draw as we could have gotten. They were playing great, and we had to suddenly fly out to the West Coast, and we played, I think, the last game of the first round.
Yeah.
And then I got thrown out of a bar.
I'm not shocked by that.
Wasn't my fault. Wasn't my fault.
Was
not my fault. A guy bumped me and then stepped to me and I had no choice. It was not my fault.
Parting words. Well, let's go with this, guys. Since you mentioned it, and we know it's all about the draw. I mean, in Dayton land, we'll tell you in 2014, the reason that Dayton went as far as they did was they got a favorable draw. They got teams that they could lock down on defensive guard play. They ran into a bad shooting night in Syracuse. Kansas got upset by Stanford. We slipped past them because they were a 10 seed, and then we lost to a 1 seed Florida. Like, we know as well as anybody. So my question to you guys is, what does that bad matchup look like for St. Louis? Is it just a team that's good from the perimeter? What does that look like to you, where you would look at a game on paper and go, this is a bad matchup for us?
The other kind of team would be like a Minnesota that beat us earlier this year. And Minnesota's got length at every position. Yep. And we can make opposing bigs, if they've got like those kind of, long 7-footers, we can make those guys look really, really good. So if there's a team with Minnesota's kind of size, I think that's the other kind of team that beats us, in addition to a team that's just got a bunch of guys who can shoot from really deep range.
Yeah, I think to add on to Pete's point about bigs, I think a big deep team. So like NC State, if they were at full health, would have really been a problem for us. Guys where they can throw 3 or 4 bigs at Hassan French and basically hack him to death and neutralize him. Now, Linson has really stepped up, so we'll see how it goes. But our big, I think Jimmy Bell's our biggest big at 6'11", and he barely gets any minutes right now. So the prototypical centers are what we really struggle with, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. French has had a knack for getting in foul trouble, but on the other side of that coin, if he gets Jordy in foul trouble, things could be a problem for Dayton, a team that doesn't have a ton of depth in the front court. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess a team with a deep bench could probably give us some problems too.
Zach, on my show, I'm a final thoughts kind of guy. So when I close the episode, I give everybody their parting thoughts, their final thoughts. I don't know how you guys end episodes, but I want to be accommodating here.
Yeah, that's about right. Usually I ask Peter if he's got anything left, but no, and I will do that. But find us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod. I am at Zach Miller, ZAC, Miller spelled the usual way. It's at Zach Miller MMP, and then Peter.
Peter is a tweeter on Twitter. Yeah, and you gave our other handle. I guess final thoughts from me is I would like to see the Arch Baron Cup return to St. Louis. I would like to see Jalen Crutcher get cold for once in his final game against SLU, or what I hope is his final game against SLU. I would rather not see Dayton in the tournament.
I got a hot take before we hop off. Martin Linson is going to take home the Harewood Horse.
Oh yeah, he's going to go for the MVP.
The MVP, yes.
Okay, yeah, sure. You know what, guys? I'll end it here with my prediction. Boy, I did it the first time we played, and I'm going to do it again. I just don't see how Dayton wins this game. I truly do not. It would take a Herculean effort from Crutcher. He'd have to have 30 points. So I'll say this. If Crutcher scores 30, we win. Any other way, it's not going to happen. I'll say St. Louis beats Dayton 75-66. I'm going to go 9-point win for St. Louis. I think they're going to cover the spread. I think the spread will be low. So I think educated college basketball spreaders will push, or bettors will push the spread up. I think it'll probably open at like 3 or 4. And then it'll probably get pushed up a little bit. But Dayton does pretty well as home dogs. So that's all I'll say. That's all I'll say there, fellas. All right?
God. I'm getting out of here. It's getting me all nervous.
Good. We can close it up for the night. Thanks for joining us. On behalf of Zach and Pete, I'm Sully. We thank you for joining in for this crossover episode. On my program, you're going to hear a little bit of music. On their program, probably not, because I like to push the rules and I still put copyright music on my program until someone tells me otherwise, and I cannot. Anyways, I don't know. They don't have any rules on their program. Mine are wear red and be loud. But if you're a St. Louis fan, don't do those things. Don't wear red or be loud. We'll just see you on Friday night, 6 o'clock. If you're in Central, 7 o'clock on the East Coast, ESPN2. Thanks for listening to the program. We'll catch you next time.